Good morning. It is 10 o'clock on the button a.m. on Saturday, February 8th, 2020. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I've been up for a little while. This is 5 more minutes. So, I decided not to record this right away because I had one more episode of Netflix's Lock and Key, and I decided I wanted to go ahead and finish that so I could talk about it. And I'll get to that in a moment. Last night with Rocket was a little bumpier than the last few, just because I don't know if it's the cold weather or something, because it's certainly cold outside. But just every time I'd take him out, he'd just get real all wound up and rambunctious and not want to go back in the crate. So we were dealing with, every time we got up, he would cry again in his crate, which is not had not been how he was doing it before. So he's tuckered in his little dog bed right now. But yeah, so eventually, one thing that helped a little was draping a towel over the crate, so he wasn't looking at me in order to try to cry for my attention. But anyway, he's continuing to do just fine, recovering better from his meds and all that. So that's all seems good. Seems good. But so now, Lock and Key. So I'm a big fan of the graphic novel that the show is based on, and have been excited ever since they originally were wanting to adapt it, but understanding that it would be a very difficult story to adapt, and for a lot of reasons, many of which are just that it's, the visuals of the comic are so elaborate and inventive and off the wall that it would just be prohibitively expensive to try to just literally put that on film. And and there's just kind of a lot going on regardless. But I'm a fan in general of adaptations where it's interesting for me to think about what is changed and why. And I'm definitely not one of those people that insists on an adaptation being slavishly faithful to the source material. And in fact, I think that's often a failing in many adaptations. But so on that note, though, so I'm not going to spoil anything in Lock and Key. But what I will say is that there's kind of two versions of the review that I would give. One is for anyone who has not read the graphic novels, I think that this is a very cool, slightly Stranger Things meets Haunting of Hill House sort of show. But although it's got sort of horrific elements, I would say it never rises past the PG-13 or so threshold. And so just as far as trying to determine like whether you feel like you would want to watch it, I think it's got a fun cast. It's inventive. There's a few places where I think if you haven't read the graphic novel, you might have to just take their word for it when they tell you things, because they don't necessarily spend as long figuring things out as they do in the graphic novel. But overall, I really liked it, and I think it's a good way to get the story out there. But for anyone who has read the graphic novel, so what I would say is, as I was just mentioning, the horror elements are toned down for sure. It's made into a more PG-13 kind of show, which honestly, for a TV show, probably better, makes it more open to a wider audience. And they change a lot of things up that are a little bit surprising. Like I wouldn't have expected them to change those things, but they do. Like characters from secondary characters just kind of getting combined. making some of the adult characters able to remember the keys for, like, it's, okay. I promise not to do spoilers. So what I'll just say is there are a few places here and there where I'm like, that feels like a kludge, where they had two conflicting parts of the story that didn't quite line up, so they just added a line of dialogue to work them together. And a few places where I'm not sure why they changed things. But other changes I think are interesting, and probably lead to the show having more legs, in terms of being able to continue being a show instead of just feeling like it has to race through the book's storyline and then be done. But overall, I'm pleased with it as another telling of a similar story, and it has some twists where things don't happen the way they do in the graphic novel, but in like a cool way. And one part of that, so there's a couple of big twists. One of them I guessed pretty early on, but was pleased with regardless. And then the other one I didn't see coming until they started revealing it. The reveal was a little bit in slow motion. Like, I feel like they gave us enough clues to figure it out about 10 minutes before they actually confirm it. But it's fine. It's still a cool twist. And definitely they have some plot threads that they set up but don't resolve, which has to be because they're planning for season 2. But I liked it. So there you have it. Lock and Key. I liked it. All right, so I'm going to leave it here for now. But I'm going to talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes, when it will be Sunday, of course. So I will be talking about my rewatch of Cowboy Bebop. So, signing off.